My name is Dean Kessler, and 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. Senior systems engineer at Morrison Tech, pulling down 200 grand a year, married to the kind of woman who makes other men hate their wives. Camille had this way of walking into a room that made conversations stop and credit cards come out. I used to think I was the luckiest guy in Minneapolis. Turns out, luck is just delayed karma with a sense of humor. The first crack in my perfect life appeared on a Tuesday morning when I found a thong in my Tesla's glove compartment. Red lace, size small. Camille wore medium, and she wouldn't be caught anywhere near something that screamed clearance rack at Victoria's Secret. When I asked her about it, she laughed and said her friend Jules must have left it there after their girls' night out. Jules drives a BMW, Camille. When has she ever been in my car? She shrugged, already scrolling through her phone. Maybe it's mine. I've been working out. Right, because losing weight makes your hip bones shrink. The second crack came when I noticed our joint savings account shrinking fast. 500 here, 800 there. When I asked about it, Camille got defensive. It's my money too, Dean. I'm allowed to spend it. On what? We agreed on a budget. God, you're such a control freak. No wonder you don't have any friends anymore. That stung because it was partly true. My social circle had been shrinking lately. Guys I'd known for years suddenly became too busy for our weekly poker games. My buddy Sanji from work was the only one who still talked to me straight. Dude, you need to know something, he said one Friday after everyone else had left the office. People are talking. About what? About Camille and Morgan Blackwell. Morgan Blackwell, our CEO, 45 years old, divorced, and rich enough to buy a small country. He had the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no, unless it was part of no problem, sir. What kind of talking? Sanji looked uncomfortable. The kind where they were seen at the Marriott Lounge last Thursday. The kind where she was wearing that blue dress you bought her for your anniversary. My stomach went cold. Thursday night, Camille had said she was at a social media conference. A work thing. Boring stuff I wouldn't understand. Maybe it was business, I said, but the words tasted like lies. Maybe, Sanji said, but business doesn't usually involve hand-holding. That weekend, I decided to test my suspicions. I told Camille I had to work Saturday, then parked across from our building and waited. At noon, she emerged wearing designer jeans and a top that cost more than most people's rent. She got into a black Mercedes that definitely wasn't an Uber. I followed them to Blackwell's mansion in Edina. Watched my wife of 8 years walk through his front door like she owned the place. She didn't come home until Sunday evening, spinning some story about a spa weekend with the girls. How was the massage? I asked. Amazing, very relaxing. You should try it sometime. Which spa? A pause. Too long. The one Jules recommended. You wouldn't know it. Monday morning, I was called into HR. Ruth Henderson, a woman who'd always treated me like I was carrying a contagious disease, sat behind her desk with a manila folder and a smile that could freeze stone. Dean, we need to discuss some performance issues. What performance issues? My team just delivered the Morrison project 2 weeks early. There have been complaints about your attitude, your work quality. From who? That's confidential. But effective immediately, you're being terminated for cause. The room started spinning. For cause? Ruth, you know that's My performance reviews have been perfect for 5 years. I'm sorry, Dean. Security will escort you out. As I cleaned out my desk, my phone buzzed with a text from Camille. Heard about work. Don't worry, you'll figure something out. P.S. Enjoy poverty. That's when I knew. She'd been planning this. They both had. 6 weeks later, I was mopping floors at Jefferson High School for $12 an hour. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd gone from designing million-dollar systems to cleaning up after teenagers who couldn't aim for a trash can. The kids were brutal. They'd recognize me from local business articles, and high schoolers have zero filter when they sense an easy target. Hey, Mr. Engineer, called out Tyler Morrison, a junior whose dad probably owned half the city. My toilet's clogged, and think you can handle that with your fancy degree? His friends laughed. I kept mopping. I'm talking to you, janitor boy. I looked up. Tyler was blocking my path, chest puffed out like a peacock who'd been hitting the gym. Behind him, his crew was recording with their phones. Move along, Tyler. Don't you have a trust fund to inherit? What did you say? You heard me. Now step aside before I show you what happens when someone with an actual education gets tired of rich kid B. Tyler shoved me, hard. I stumbled backward, but kept my balance. The mop bucket wasn't so lucky. It tipped over, sending dirty water across the hallway. Oops, Tyler grinned. Looks like you've got more work to do. Something snapped inside me. I grabbed the mop, wrung it out, and before Tyler could react, I slapped him across the face with it. The wet strings left streaks of dirty water across his designer shirt. What the heck? Physics lesson, Tyler. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You want to act like garbage? You get treated like garbage. The crowd of kids erupted in laughter, but now they were laughing at Tyler, not me. His face turned red as he realized his humiliation was being broadcast live on social media. You're dead, old man. No, Tyler, I'm just getting started. That afternoon, I sliced my hand open on a broken window I was replacing. The cut was deep enough to need stitches, so I drove myself to Hennepin County Medical Center. Just my luck. The ER was packed with people from my old life. I sat in the waiting room, pressing a soaked towel against my palm when I heard familiar voices. Is that Dean Kessler? It was Brad Hutchinson, a guy I used to play golf with. Jesus, what happened to him? I heard he got fired for incompetence, said another voice. Camille's better off without him. She's with Morgan Blackwell now, right? Smart woman, trading up. I wanted to stand up and tell them exactly what their friend Camille was really like, but the nurse called my name before I could make a scene. Dr. Bronson was a tired-looking man in his 50s who'd probably seen every kind of stupidity the human race could offer. How'd this happen? He asked, examining the cut. Broken glass, occupational hazard. What do you do? I'm a janitor. He nodded without judgment, which I appreciated. We'll need to clean this out and stitch it up. I'll also need to run some lab tests, standard procedure for any injury that might involve infection. 20 minutes later, I was stitched up and waiting for my discharge papers when Dr. Bronson returned with a strange expression on his face. Mr. Kessler, I need to ask you something. Do you have any family history you might not be aware of? What do you mean? Your lab results show some unusual genetic markers. I've called in a specialist to take a look. 10 minutes later, Dr. Sarah Chen arrived with 2 other doctors I didn't recognize. They huddled around a computer screen, pointing and whispering like they'd discovered a new species. Mr. Kessler, Dr. Chen finally said, this is going to sound strange, but your DNA shows a familial match in our database. A what? You have a half-brother, someone who has been in our system before for a routine physical. That's impossible. I'm an only child. My parents never mentioned, the match is definitive. Your half-brother is Morgan Blackwell. The room tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of the examination table to keep from falling over. That can't be right. DNA doesn't lie, Mr. Kessler. Morgan Blackwell is your half-brother. Same father, different mothers. I sat there in stunned silence as the implications crashed over me like a tsunami. Morgan had destroyed my life, knowing we were family. He'd stolen my wife, my job, my future, and he'd done it to his own brother. Mr. Kessler, are you all right? Yeah, I said, standing up on shaky legs. I'm perfect, but I wasn't perfect. I was something much more dangerous. I was a man with nothing left to lose and a very specific target for my rage. The next morning, I called in sick to my janitor job and spent the day at the Minneapolis Public Library using their computers to research everything I could find about Morgan Blackwell. What I discovered made my anger surge. Morgan's father, William Blackwell, had died 5 years ago. According to his obituary, he was survived by his loving son, Morgan, and devoted wife, Patricia. No mention of other children. No mention of the affair he'd had with my mother 39 years ago. I dug deeper. William had owned a small construction company in the 1980s. My mother had worked as his secretary for 2 years before I was born. She'd always told me my father was a traveling salesman who had died in a car accident. Apparently, she'd been protecting both of us from the truth. That evening, I followed Camille to one of her influencer events at the Guthrie Theater. Some charity BS for underprivileged kids. The kind of cause rich people support so they can feel good about themselves while writing off their donations. I bought a ticket using my credit card, dressed in my one remaining good suit, and blended into the crowd. The irony of being surrounded by Minneapolis's elite while working as a janitor wasn't lost on me. Camille looked stunning in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than I made in a month. She worked the room like a professional politician, air-kissing and networking with the kind of people who measured their worth in Instagram followers. Morgan arrived fashionably late, making an entrance that screamed, "Look at me." He was wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than my car, and he moved through the crowd like a shark through a school of fish. When he reached Camille, he kissed her. Not a polite social kiss, but a possessive territorial marking that made it clear to everyone watching, this woman belongs to me now. I wanted to march over there and punch his perfect teeth down his throat. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started recording. Knowledge was power, and I was going to need all the ammunition I could get. Dean Kessler? I turned around to find myself face to face with Jules Martinez, Camille's best friend and primary enabler. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" "Same as everyone else, Jules. Supporting underprivileged children." "You can't afford to be here. You'd be surprised what I can afford." She looked nervous, glancing around like she was expecting security to materialize. "Camille doesn't want to see you." "I'm sure she doesn't. How long have you known about her and Morgan?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Come on, Jules. You're her best friend. You knew she was cheating on me months before I figured it out. That's not—" "Look, Dean, you need to move on. Camille's moved on. You should too." "Oh, I am moving on, in ways you can't imagine." I walked away before she could respond, but I could feel her eyes following me across the room. Within minutes, I saw her whispering frantically into Camille's ear. My wife's head snapped around, scanning the crowd until she spotted me. Our eyes met across the room. For a moment, I saw something that might have been guilt flash across her face. Then Morgan appeared beside her, following her gaze until he was staring directly at me. He said something to Camille, then started walking in my direction. I could have run, but I was done running. Instead, I stood my ground and waited for my half-brother to come to me. "You've got some balls showing up here," Morgan said when he reached me. "It's a public event. I bought a ticket." "With what money? I heard you're cleaning toilets now." "Honest work. You should try it sometime." His jaw tightened. "You need to leave. Now." "Or what? You'll have me fired again?" "I had nothing to do with that. Your performance spoke for itself." "My performance was perfect, and we both know it. Just like we both know why you really wanted me gone." "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything, brother. I'm stating facts." The word brother hit him like a physical blow. His face went white, then red, then white again. "What did you just say?" "You heard me. DNA doesn't lie, Morgan. Though apparently our father did." He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep. "You don't know what you're talking about." "William Blackwell, my mother's old boss, your dear old dad. Ring any bells?" "You're insane." "Am I?" "Because I've got hospital records that say otherwise. Want to see them?" Morgan's grip loosened. I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to process this information and figure out how to use it to his advantage. "Even if that were true," he said finally, "it doesn't change anything. Camille chose me. She chose better. She chose money. There's a difference. Money I earned. Success I built. While you were playing with computers, I was building an empire. An empire built on our father's money. Money that should have been split between his sons. You have no claim to anything. Maybe not legally, but morally? That's a different story." I pulled out my phone and showed him the video I'd been recording. "Smile, Morgan. You're going to be famous." Before he could react, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there with his mouth hanging open. As I reached the exit, I looked back to see Camille rushing to his side, her face a mask of panic. Phase 1 was complete. Now the real fun could begin. The next morning, I created several anonymous social media accounts and began my campaign. I uploaded the video from the charity event with a caption that read, "Local CEO Morgan Blackwell caught in heated argument with mystery man. What secrets is he hiding?" Within hours, it had been shared hundreds of times. The comments section was a goldmine of speculation and gossip. I sat in my tiny studio apartment, eating ramen noodles, and watching my enemy's world start to crack. My phone rang around noon. It was Sanji. "Dude, what the heck did you do?" "What do you mean?" "Morgan's been in meetings all morning. Something's got him rattled. And there's this video going around." "Haven't seen it." "Dean, I know it's you in the video. What did you say to him?" "Just had a friendly conversation about family." "Family? What family?" I told Sanji about the DNA test results. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Holy crap," he finally whispered. "Yeah, holy crap. What are you going to do?" "Whatever it takes." That afternoon, I put on my janitor uniform and drove to Morrison Tech. I still had friends in the building. Maintenance guys, security guards, people Morgan barely noticed. They let me in through the loading dock. No questions asked. I made my way to the executive floor using the service elevator. Morgan's office was at the end of the hall, behind double doors that screamed, "Important person works here." His secretary was at lunch, so I had a clear path. I didn't break in. That would have been illegal. Instead, I waited in the janitor's closet across the hall until I heard voices. Morgan was in a meeting with 3 men I didn't recognize. Through the crack in the door, I could hear every word. "The video is a problem," one of them was saying. "Our investors don't like controversy." "It's nothing," Morgan replied. "Just some disgruntled ex-employee trying to cause trouble." Ex-employee? The man in the video looked like he wanted to end you. Dean Kessler is harmless. A loser who can't accept that his wife upgraded. Maybe we should look into him. Make sure there aren't any other surprises. "No need. I know everything there is to know about Dean Kessler. Trust me, he's not a threat." I smiled in the darkness of the closet. Morgan's arrogance was going to be his downfall. After the meeting ended, I waited until the coast was clear, then made my way to the parking garage. Morgan's Mercedes was parked in his reserved spot, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I pulled out my janitor's toolkit and got to work. Nothing illegal. Just a few harmless pranks that would send a message. I loosened the valve stems on his tires, not enough to cause a blowout, just enough to make them go flat slowly. I used soap to write "cheater" on his windshield. It would wash off, but not before everyone in the garage saw it. The pièce de résistance was a bag of fish I'd bought from the grocery store. I slipped them under his car, where the heat from the engine would help them ripen nicely over the next few days. As I was finishing up, I heard footsteps echoing through the garage. Derek Hoffman, Morgan's personal security guy, was walking toward me with the kind of purposeful stride that meant trouble. "You lost, buddy?" Derek was built like a linebacker who'd traded his helmet for a black suit. He had the kind of muscles that came from a lifetime of intimidating people who couldn't fight back. "Just finishing up some maintenance," I said, closing my toolkit. "Maintenance on Mr. Blackwell's car?" "The whole garage, part of the service contract." Derek looked skeptical. "I don't think so. I think you're Dean Kessler, and I think you're here to cause trouble." "You think a lot of things, Derek. Doesn't make them true. Mr. Blackwell wants you to stay away from him and his property. Consider this your only warning." "Or what?" Derek smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Or I'll make sure you understand the message better next time." He turned to walk away, and that's when I made my move. I grabbed a wrench from my toolkit and threw it as hard as I could. It hit the concrete floor right behind Derek's feet with a loud clang that echoed through the garage. Derek spun around, his hand reaching inside his jacket. "Oops," I said. "Butterfingers. You son of a witch. That's Mr. Son of a Witch to you." Derek started walking toward me, his face twisted with anger. I backed away slowly, leading him deeper into the garage, away from the security cameras. "You want to dance, Derek? Let's dance." When he was close enough, I swung my toolkit at his knees. He jumped back, but not fast enough. The metal box caught him in the shin and he stumbled. "You're going to regret that." "I regret a lot of things, Derek, but this isn't going to be one of them." He rushed me then, and I did something he wasn't expecting. I ran. Not away from him, but toward the maintenance area where I knew the terrain better than he did. Derek followed me into a maze of pipes and electrical panels. He was bigger and stronger, but I was smarter and more desperate. When he rounded a corner, I was waiting with a mop bucket full of dirty water. The bucket caught him full in the face, and he went down hard, slipping on the wet concrete. Before he could get up, I was on him with a wet mop, slapping him across the face like I'd done to Tyler at the school. "How's it feel, tough guy? Still want to deliver messages?" Derek tried to grab the mop, but I yanked it away and hit him again. He was sputtering and cursing, his expensive suit soaked with dirty water. "Tell Morgan I got his message," I said, "and tell him I've got one for him, too." I left Derek sitting in a puddle of mop water, his dignity as soaked as his clothes. As I walked away, I could hear him calling for backup on his radio. But I was already gone, disappearing into the Minneapolis afternoon like a ghost with a grudge. 2 days later, Morgan's world started falling apart in earnest. I'd spent the previous evening in the library using their computers to research every aspect of his business empire. What I found was a goldmine of corruption and corner cutting that would make any investigative journalist salivate. Morrison Tech had been awarded several city contracts under suspicious circumstances. Morgan had been making campaign contributions to the same city council members who voted on those contracts. It wasn't illegal, but it looked bad enough to raise questions. I compiled everything into a comprehensive dossier and sent it anonymously to every major news outlet in the Twin Cities. The subject line read, Morrison Tech CEO Morgan Blackwell, success built on corruption? By Wednesday morning, the story was everywhere. Channel 5 led with it on their morning show. The Star Tribune ran it on the front page of the business section. Social media exploded with speculation and outrage. I watched the coverage from my apartment, eating cereal and feeling like a puppet master pulling strings from the shadows. My phone rang around 9 a.m. Dean, what the heck have you done? It was Camille, and she sounded panicked. Good morning to you too, sweetheart. How's life in the fast lane? Don't play games with me. I know you're behind this media circus. Behind what? I'm just a humble janitor. What would I know about media circuses? Morgan's lawyers are already involved. If you don't stop this harassment campaign, they're going to destroy you. Destroy me? Camille, I'm already destroyed. You and your boyfriend made sure of that. I've got nothing left to lose. You're pathetic. Maybe, but I'm pathetic with a plan. She hung up on me, but I was already moving on to phase 2. I drove to Jefferson High School for my shift, but instead of mopping floors, I spent the day making phone calls. I called every major client Morrison Tech had, posing as a concerned citizen who'd seen the news reports. I didn't make any accusations, I just asked questions. Have you seen the news about Morrison Tech? Are you concerned about your company's association with them? Do you think this might affect their ability to deliver on their contracts? By Thursday, 3 major clients had put their contracts with Morrison Tech under review. The company's stock price dropped 12% in 2 days. Friday afternoon, I decided to pay Morgan a personal visit. I knew he usually worked late on Fridays, and I wanted to see how he was handling the pressure. I parked across the street from Morrison Tech and waited. At 7 p.m., Morgan emerged from the building looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie was crooked, and he kept checking his phone like he was expecting bad news. He got into his Mercedes, which still smelled faintly of rotting fish, based on the expression on his face when he opened the door, and drove toward downtown. I followed at a distance, curious to see where he was going. He ended up at Manny's Steakhouse, one of those expensive places where rich people go to pretend they're not worried about money. Through the window, I could see him sitting at a corner table with 2 men in expensive suits. Lawyers, probably, or maybe investors trying to distance themselves from the sinking ship. I walked into the restaurant like I belonged there. The hostess looked at my janitor's uniform with barely concealed disgust. Can I help you? I'm here to see Mr. Blackwell. He's expecting me. Before she could stop me, I walked straight to Morgan's table. The conversation died as soon as they saw me. Hello, brother. Mind if I join you? Morgan's face went through about 6 different shades of red. Get out of here. Now. That's no way to treat family. Aren't you going to introduce me to your friends? The 2 lawyers, because that's obviously what they were, looked confused and uncomfortable. Blackwell, one of them said. Who is this person? Nobody, Morgan said. Security. Actually, I said, sitting down uninvited, I'm Dean Kessler, Morgan's half-brother. We just recently discovered we're family. Isn't that right, Morgan? You're insane. Am I? Because I've got DNA test results that say otherwise. Want to see them? I pulled out my phone and showed them the hospital records. The lawyers leaned forward, reading with the kind of professional interest that meant they were already calculating billable hours. This is fascinating, one of them said. Mr. Blackwell, you never mentioned having a brother. Because I don't. This man is delusional. DNA tests are pretty conclusive these days, the other lawyer said. If this is legitimate, it's not, Morgan snapped. Actually, it is, I said. And it raises some interesting questions about our father's estate, doesn't it? I mean, if William Blackwell had 2 sons, shouldn't his assets have been divided equally? Morgan stood up so fast his chair fell over. That's enough. I'm leaving. Running away, Morgan? That's not very CEO-like behavior. I'm not running from anything, especially not from you. Then sit down and let's discuss this like family. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. His hands were clenched into fists, and there was homicide in his eyes. But we were in a public place, surrounded by witnesses, and Morgan was too smart to do something that stupid. Instead, he threw $100 bill on the table and stormed out, leaving his lawyers sitting there with their mouths hanging open. Gentlemen, I said, standing up, it's been a pleasure. I'm sure we'll be seeing each other again soon. As I walked out of the restaurant, I could hear them whispering frantically behind me. By Monday morning, half of Minneapolis would know that Morgan Blackwell had a secret half-brother with a legitimate claim to the family fortune. The empire was crumbling, and I was just getting started. Monday morning brought the kind of chaos I'd been hoping for. The story of Morgan's secret half-brother had leaked to the press over the weekend, and every news outlet in the city was running with it. The headlines were brutal. Blackwell's brother, bombshell. Morrison Tech CEO's family secret exposed. Half-brother claims inheritance fraud. I sat in my apartment watching the coverage on 3 different channels while eating toast and planning my endgame. My phone had been ringing all morning, reporters wanting interviews, lawyers sensing an opportunity, and random people who'd somehow gotten my number. Around 10 a.m., there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Derek Hoffman standing in the hallway, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "What do you want, Derek? Mr. Blackwell wants to meet with you. Tell Mr. Blackwell he knows where to find me. He's willing to make a deal." That got my attention. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. "What kind of deal?" "The kind where everyone walks away happy." "I'm already happy, Derek. Your boss is the one with problems. Just hear him out." "1 meeting. Neutral location. Where?" "The parking garage at Hennepin County Medical Center. Level 3. 1 hour." It was fitting, I thought, the same hospital where I'd learned the truth about my parentage, the place where this whole nightmare had started. "I'll be there." Derek nodded and walked away without another word. I spent the next hour preparing. I wrote out everything I knew about Morgan's corruption and put it in an envelope addressed to the FBI. If something happened to me, Sanji had instructions to mail it. I also made copies of all the DNA test results and put them in a safety deposit box. Then I drove to the hospital. The parking garage was mostly empty at that time of day. I found Morgan's Mercedes on level 3, right where Derek said it would be. Morgan was leaning against the hood, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in the past week. "You came," he said when he saw me. "You asked nicely." "Let's skip the BS, Dean. What do you want?" "Justice. Be specific. I want my job back. I want a public apology, and I want my fair share of our father's estate." Morgan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want the moon while you're at it? I want what's rightfully mine. You're not entitled to anything. Our father made his choice when he wrote his will. Our father didn't know I existed when he wrote his will. That's not my problem. It is now." Morgan pushed himself off the car and walked toward me. For a moment, I thought he might try to intimidate me physically, but he stopped just out of arm's reach. "You have no idea what you're messing with," he said. "I've built something here, an empire, and I'm not going to let some bitter loser tear it down because his wife left him for a better man." "She didn't leave me for a better man, Morgan. She left me for a richer man. There's a difference. Money is how we keep score in this world, Dean, and by that measure, I'm winning." "Are you?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're losing everything. Your reputation, your business, your investors' confidence. How many clients have you lost this week?" "Temporary setbacks. I'll recover." "Will you? Because I'm just getting started." That's when Derek stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, moving with the kind of casual menace that meant he'd been planning this ambush. "Actually," Morgan said, "you're finished." "What's the plan here, Morgan? Derek's going to beat me up? Make me disappear? You think that's going to solve your problems?" "I think it's going to send a message to anyone else who thinks they can blackmail me. This isn't blackmail, this is justice. This is harassment, and it ends now." Derek started walking toward me, cracking his knuckles like he was warming up for a workout. I backed away slowly, looking for an escape route or a tool. "You know what your problem is, Morgan?" I said, still backing away. "You think money solves everything, but some problems can't be bought off. Every man has a price. Maybe, but you can't afford mine." That's when I pulled out my phone and hit the live stream button. Within seconds, I was broadcasting to every social media platform I had, and my follower count was climbing rapidly. "Say hello to Minneapolis, Morgan. You're live on the internet." Morgan's face went white. "Turn that off." "Why? I thought you liked being famous." "Derek, get that phone." Derek lunged for me, but I was ready. I dodged to the left and ran toward the stairwell, keeping the phone pointed at them. "This is Dean Kessler, broadcasting live from a parking garage where my half-brother, Morgan Blackwell, just threatened to have me beaten up by his hired muscle. Say hi, Derek." Derek was chasing me up the stairs, cursing and breathing hard. I took the steps 2 at a time, my heart pounding with adrenaline and fear. For those just joining us, Morgan Blackwell is the CEO of Morrison Tech, who's been all over the news this week for corruption and fraud. He's also the man who stole my wife and had me fired from my job. Family loyalty, right? I reached the roof access door and burst through it, Derek right behind me. The Minneapolis skyline spread out before us, beautiful and indifferent to the drama playing out on this concrete stage. End of the line, Derek said, breathing hard. Actually, Derek, this is where it gets interesting. I kept the phone camera pointed at him as he approached. Behind him, Morgan emerged from the stairwell, looking panicked. Turn off the camera, Dean. We can work this out. Now you want to work it out? After you sent your goon to threaten me? I never threatened you. Really? Because a few thousand people just heard you say otherwise. I looked at my phone. The viewer count was climbing rapidly. 5,000, 8,000, 12,000 people watching live as Minneapolis's most prominent CEO melted down in real time. You want to know the truth about Morgan Blackwell? I said to the camera. He's a coward who destroys other people's lives for sport. He stole my wife, had me fired, and tried to erase me from existence. But the joke's on him. You can't erase family. We're not family, Morgan said. DNA says otherwise. And so does this. I pulled out a document I'd been saving for this moment, a copy of our father's original will, the one he'd written before Morgan had it changed. I'd found it in the public records, buried under years of legal paperwork. This is William Blackwell's first will, written in 1985. It says, and I quote, "Should I have any other children, biological or adopted, my estate shall be divided equally among all my offspring." Interesting reading, don't you think? Morgan's face went from white to red to purple. That will was superseded by a will written after you told him I didn't exist. Fraud, Morgan. That's what they call it when you lie to get someone's money. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can, because I found something else in the public records. A private investigator's report from 1986. Seems our dear old dad hired someone to find me and my mother. The investigator found us, but someone paid him to bury the report. Care to guess who? Morgan's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. That's right, folks. Morgan Blackwell knew about me 30 years ago. He's been covering up my existence his entire adult life, stealing money that rightfully belonged to both of us. The viewer count was approaching 20,000 now. Comments were flooding in faster than I could read them. But I caught enough to know that public opinion was firmly on my side. "You son of a witch," Morgan said, finally finding his voice. "Yeah, I am. Same as you, literally." That's when Morgan snapped. He rushed at me with a primal scream of rage, his hands reaching for my throat. I sidestepped at the last second, and he stumbled past me, barely catching himself, before he went over the edge of the roof. "Careful, brother. It's a long way down." Morgan spun around, his face twisted with hatred. "I should have had you ended years ago, but you didn't. And now it's too late. It's never too late." He nodded to Derek, who started moving toward me again. But this time, I was ready with more than just evasive maneuvers. "Derek," I said, "you might want to check your employment contract, specifically the part about committing felonies on camera." Derek hesitated, looking back at Morgan uncertainly. "Do it," Morgan said. "Actually, Derek, don't. Because assault and battery charges tend to stick when there's video evidence and 20,000 witnesses." Derek stopped moving. He might have been a thug, but he wasn't stupid. "You're fired," Morgan told him. "No," Derek said. "I quit." He turned and walked back toward the stairwell, leaving Morgan alone with me and 25,000 people watching online. "Looks like it's just you and me now, brother." Morgan looked around desperately, like he was searching for an escape route that didn't exist. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "I told you what I want. Justice. Fine. You want money? I'll write you a check right now." "I don't want your money, Morgan. I want you to lose everything, the same way you made me lose everything." "That's not going to happen. It's already happening. Check your stock price lately. How about your client list, your reputation?" Morgan pulled out his phone and looked at it. Whatever he saw there made his face go pale again. "Morrison Tech stock is down 40% since this live stream started," I continued. "Your board of directors is probably having an emergency meeting right now. How long do you think it'll take them to vote you out?" "They can't do that. I built this company with stolen money and corruption. They can absolutely do that." Morgan's phone started ringing. He looked at the caller ID and his face crumpled. "That's your board chairman, isn't it?" He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. I could see the defeat in his eyes. "Answer it, Morgan." Let's hear what they have to say. Go to heck. I've been there, brother. It's called being married to Camille. For the first time since this whole thing started, Morgan actually laughed. It was a broken, bitter sound, but it was genuine. She is a piece of work, isn't she? The worst. But you're welcome to her. Thanks, I think. His phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. You should probably take that. Morgan looked at the phone, then at me, then at the camera that was still broadcasting our conversation to 30,000 people. Yeah, he said finally, I probably should. He answered the phone, and even from 6 feet away, I could hear the shouting on the other end. Morgan's face went through a series of expressions. Surprise, anger, resignation, and finally, defeat. I understand, he said into the phone. Yes, I'll clean out my office. No, I won't contest it. He hung up and looked at me with something that might have been respect. Congratulations, Dean, you win. We both lose, Morgan. That's what makes it justice. What happens now? Now you live with the consequences of your choices, same as everyone else. I looked into the camera one last time. This is Dean Kessler signing off. Remember, folks, family isn't just about biology, it's about loyalty. And some people just don't understand the difference. I ended the live stream and put my phone away. Morgan was still standing there, looking lost and broken. For what it's worth, I said, I'm sorry it came to this. No, you're not. You're right, I'm not. I walked past him toward the stairwell, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Morgan, tell Camille I said good luck. She's going to need it. I left him standing on that rooftop, surrounded by the ruins of his empire and the echoes of 30,000 witnesses to his downfall. 3 months later, I was back at Morrison Tech. Not as a janitor, but as the new CEO. The board had voted unanimously to hire me after Morgan's resignation and the subsequent investigation into the company's practices. It turned out that having a viral video with millions of views was pretty good for name recognition. Camille tried to come back, of course. She showed up at my office one day with tears in her eyes and apologies on her lips. I listened politely, then had security escort her out. Morgan disappeared somewhere warm and expensive, probably living off whatever money he'd managed to hide in offshore accounts. Derek got a job as a bouncer at an adult club downtown. Camille started an online subscription page and moved back in with her mother. And me? I learned that revenge is a dish best served with a side of justice and a live stream audience of millions.